This case could end mail-in voting and early voting permanently. This would basically forego the need for a SAVE Act to go through the Senate. So in January 2024, the Republican National Committee and the Mississippi Republican Party sued the Mississippi Secretary of State Michael Watson. They were trying to block enforcement of the 5-day receipt grace period for absentee ballots in federal elections, claiming that it violated the Federal Election Day statute, which describes Election Day as the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Now in July 2024, the summary judgment held that federal law does not preempt the state statute, meaning that states have the ability to determine their own rules in an election. And they said that the Federal Election Day statute is just an aim to prevent multiple or staggered voting days across states. That way there's no undue influence from one state finishing their count while another still has an opportunity to vote, the way that we sometimes see in primaries. Now in October 2024, the Fifth Circuit panel reversed in part on that decision. It held that federal law actually does preempt Mississippi's grace period. The court interpreted that the election requires not only casting the ballots, but also their official receipt. And for the process to achieve finality, then those ballots have to be received on election day. So extending the receipt deadlines conflicts with the federal requirement. However, this does make a risk that someone's vote could be nullified because of problems with USPS. Now this case has been accepted to the Supreme Court to be decided fully, and we're expecting a ruling in either June or early July. Now, the federal statutes do set a day for voting or casting ballots, but do not regulate receipt deadlines. The Elections Clause does give states primary authority over election administration details, and many states have similar provisions with short grace periods to prevent people from being disenfranchised by delays in USPS. Congress has been aware of this for a long time and have not acted on this from the legislative branch, nor have they prohibited it. So a court ruling would undermine that flexibility. However, federal law does establish a single uniform national election day, and an election is not complete until the ballots are received by officials. And allowing for later receipt does create multi-day voting, so that does undermine the federal uniformity. States do not have unilateral authority to extend that federal deadline. There's a few possible outcomes. If the court rules in favor of Watson, then Mississippi's grace period is upheld, and we see the post-COVID status quo become the legal standard. Now, if the court rules for the RNC in a narrow ruling, that would mean that mail-in and absentee votes must be received by election day. So you'd see cutoff periods, you would see that mail-in vote has to be sent out much earlier to ensure that no delays at the post office could disenfranchise votes. You might see states respond by adding more drop boxes or having longer early voting periods. So here's the kicker. If the Supreme Court rules on this case with a broad ruling, they could decide to define an election as both the casting and receipt of ballots, meaning no more early voting at all, no more mail-in voting at all. Going back to the old standard with very limited absentee voting for people who can prove a need for absentee voting. We'll likely see this ruled on in the next couple weeks. But this court has not shied away from major rulings, and this is the time of year where you see those biggest rulings, so stay tuned.